Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Biggening Corporation. This episode 45 is mostly going to be time-lapse again. I'm going to run a quick Twitter poll to see how people feel about the original stream was we did all real-time, you coded right along with me. A few people definitely enjoyed that. A lot of people don't have the time to enjoy all of that. So I thought this would be an interesting compromise of doing a lot of things on screen in time lapse rather than live. So we'll see if that makes sense. I think there's still benefit to doing some of the stretches of things, like a couple weeks ago when we did some development work around custom API and Power Automate. Doing that in real time is very valuable for people. But when it's doing functional things like crafting code units that are, I'll call it standard, or at least they're not using any novel infrastructure to Business Central, this feels like a good way to make the most use of everyone's time and keep the project moving. You'll see that today was doing a bit more cleanup on the player role center, and then working on some of the bugs and issues that I was discovering in the snapshot functionality, as well as trying to dig into what was going on with the fact that all of our test companies were missing items. Because as it turned out, that logic was all in place, but it was running into errors. And you'll discover that you are not alone if you struggle with, I'm trying to do something, it seems perfectly clear what I'm trying to do, and I don't know why it's not working. So hopefully, unlike last week, I'm hopefully going to stream with the audio this time. So hooray for changing the technology and platform. So here goes. So, yeah, I wanted to include in a live stream somewhere the experience that definitely happens to all of us. And I think that's something that it's very valuable to share with people who are new to the development effort of sometimes you're an expert and you're still going, what what are you doing here? If we look at what we did today, just to recap, because it's sometimes valuable to say, okay, what actually all happened in that live stream? We updated the role center with a bunch of info and just jump off links. You'll notice I haven't gone through and added captions to a lot of things, which is I wouldn't put it into a customer environment without those translation issues, code cop issues, and all that sort of thing. But I just wanted to get them in there somewhere. We're going to do a big caption cleanup and pass sometime soon. The snapshot capture feature went a little back and forth on the design of that in real time, but effectively just went, okay, you know what? If the snapshots that are collected, if there are any players missing, we're not done, don't rank it yet. And that should minimize how much we were running into some deadlocking issues, because the old code would just try to calculate everyone's ranks all at once in a multi-company table from potentially, anywhere from 2 to 200 players. That doesn't work very well. So we've gone ahead and fixed that. We'll see how this works. I'm going to have to create a scenario sometime in the near future where we create 20 companies and see how the eventing on this snapshot capturing is going to fly. I am not still sold that I've solved the deadlocking here, because we're writing to a bunch of multiple things from the same event are writing to the same table. So that's potentially an issue. We had a few other odds and ends. I noted that we put some code in place to copy a lot of the setup records from the master company to the entities. And, in BC and NAV, we can rely on, if not insert, then modify, to kind of gently skip over records and just update them. But it's not great practice. And my event log was a mess from just initializing one company. Every failed insert was producing a warning, usually 2 or 3. So not an appropriate way to code this. I was thinking of redoing this structure anyways, so that'll be a to-do somewhere in the stream of things. Real quick, we just added a button to manually kick off the initialization job for ease of debugging, and then we got into the mess. There were a couple of little admin things. We don't need to throw an error if the user already exists. We can just gracefully skip out of that function. Don't know why I threw an error. It's fine. But the main thing that we were doing is in the workflow of initializing a new company, each of these tasks potentially is posting some cache related transactions through a gen journal, and we were calling commit after that in case of any sort of pop-ups or whatever have you, since we were posting. And posting multiple times, we really should commit. However, that meant that when we got down to an issue and ran into an error here, go figure, the next time we ran it, they were getting all the same starting cache again. So went through and added a lot of hooks into the beginning of the function to make sure we weren't duplicating efforts. But we were getting a lot of weird issues. And my favorite ended up being this insane chunk of code here. This is copying over items from the master company, the ones that are marked as available at start. Makes sense. They're going to be the ones that we're going to need to be the base resources that players would trade and start with, and eventually they'll unlock some other ones. But I was pretty happy when we first coded this, going, cool, the base unit of measure, if we validate that, it'll create the related item unit of measure for us. It does, actually. But further down in the workflow of things, when we're creating the vendors, we're connecting which items the vendors are trading in by we made use of the item vendor table, since that's the point of that table. That didn't work. This was actually the table that was throwing errors that unit of measures were missing, and that was really confusing. Well, I went back and forth. Here in our workflow, we insert the item, then we validate the base unit of measure, modify, and we don't manually create the item unit of measure because when we validate the base unit of measure, it does create the item unit of measure that's related. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We can use that. Well, then with this setup, we get an error message a little later in the workflow when we use the item vendor table saying the unit measure table item cross-reference contains a value that can't be found in the related item unit of measure table. Huh, that's weird. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to rely on the base functionality, even though we should, about the base unit of measure validation to create the item unit of measure. So I'll code that in. No problem. I'll make sure it's in there. Can do. And go figure, if we're validating base unit measure and we try to create it ourselves, we get it already exists. I debugged when we called this table. It is looking for the right record. It just doesn't find it. So it's a great example of sometimes you will just go back and forth trying to figure out something that does not make sense. First off, you put it down for the day, come back to it the next day. That is always a good policy. Second of all, sit down with someone else, even if it's like a random object, like a rubber duck or a metal slime. Explain to the duck the problem, talk through the code, see if you can make sense of it by trying to explain it. I have not done either of those things just because of the time flow here. And one of my to-dos that I did not get to last week, but I need to prioritize up this week, is on 16 CU3. I want to make sure that this isn't an issue that's already been fixed in a prior version, so I am going to be doing a recording that will be over on our Patreon for how to upgrade a 16 CU3 to an 18 CU2. And that'll be just one of the base levels, probably bronze. And it'll just be a step-by-step guide of going through and doing that. So I'm going to put pause trying to fix this glitch to see if it's something in the base version first. When you're going around and around and you know that you're doing something right, or you're certain you're doing something right, which you might not be right, but you're certain of it anyway, sometimes it's a good idea. Make sure that you're running the latest version. Maybe there's a bug you just happen to be the unlucky person to find. So I'm going to do that, and these code changes will get checked into the repo today. You may see some of those go in. And I think that's the summary of that one today. So hopefully this will be a good format for people where a lot of the legwork is done high speed and then we just talk through it. So hopefully that works well for people and allows people to keep up a little bit better. And this is one of the big remaining hurdles is to my own testing to make sure this works is to get these items to come over correctly. One of the things I had been thinking of doing to replace the initialization logic, here we've got a company in the system right now that is a master company, and we're copying data from that. And that's true for the items. I've been debating, because I was going to do this anyways for the Kronos Foundation, is to create a little micro extension that allows you to create extension objects that apply data to a company in a smart sort of way. Kind of brings them in through the config package / rapid start branding and allows you to quickly apply those. I may look at doing that for this in the near future. It depends on how stuck around the axle I get with these items. So that, I think, is going to cover most of what we were going to cover today, and hopefully this shorter format will work with people. There'll be a poll on the Spare Brain Twitter just to see how people feel. Do we like the time-lapse plus explain, or do we miss the old school style of you get to ride along with me and swear at the code and go, Jeremy, you're missing a bracket. Come on, man. So hopefully this will be good, and I will see you all next Monday afternoon. Take care, everybody. There's 2 clicks to end the stream. one of them is so